today. As Chair of the Tourism Recovery Task Force, I am pleased to provide you with a brief overview of the Tourism Recovery Plan and to discuss the wider impact that COVID is having on the tourism industry. Tourism is the most important Indigenous labour-intensive sector in Ireland and generates very substantial export earnings and tax revenues. It is woven into the fabric of Irish culture and social life and is of critical importance to regional economies in particular. Because tourism is so integrated into the economy and so diverse and overwhelmingly made up of SMEs, it has suffered from a lack of visibility and recognition as an internationally traded service. In addition, tourism plays an important role in promoting Ireland's image abroad, generating a positive impression of Irish people, its landscape and culture for our visitors, which can influence other aspects of our relationship with the world, whether in investment decisions or in educational choices. COVID has created a perfect storm for tourism. The requirement to trade in an environment requiring social distancing and limiting gatherings, together with the fact that travel restrictions have meant that overseas tourism is virtually disappeared, is threatening the survival of a large part of the tourism ecosystem in Ireland. Tourism provided $9 billion to the Irish economy in 2019 and supported 260,000 jobs. This year, it is likely to be less than $3 billion, and 180,000 of those jobs are either already lost or very vulnerable. Like all countries, tourism faces an existential crisis, and the impact of COVID is likely to continue well into 2021 for our industry. The situation in Ireland is exacerbated by the fact that we are dependent on overseas tourism for 75% of our revenue. As a consequence of the initial lockdown from mid-March, the tourism industry requested the establishment of a tourism recovery task force. A tripartite structure was recommended to include industry, tourism agencies and departments participation so as to ensure a collaborative approach to mitigate the impact on the sector and to develop a 3-year recovery plan for the tourism industry. The then Ministers Griffin and Ross established the TRT in late May, a private public body comprising 14 members, including industry and external business experts, tourism agencies and our department. The Tourism Recovery Plan was submitted to Minister Martin on September 30th. It makes 33 recommendations for the survival and recovery phases. Prior to submitting the recovery plan, the task force provided a number of other inputs to keep the Minister appraised of its deliberations. These included an initial statement in mid-June, just in advance of businesses being able to reopen, an initial report in advance of the government July job stimulus, highlighting the key recommendations for business survival at that time, and a chairperson's note to the Minister on September the 21st in advance of the full report being made to her, which outlined the pre-budgetary industry survival recommendations. The task force consulted widely with industry, implementing a consultation phase in its first month, and that resulted in 813 submissions. Further consultation was also undertaken with wider government and external expertise. This led to the establishment of 8 work streams, led primarily by TRT members, with external participants and industry experts. Each work stream considered a specific area of importance to the survival and recovery of the sector with a view to informing the final plan. The plan covered recommendations both to help ensure the survival of tourism businesses and jobs, but also to help the sector to stabilise and recover in the years to come. It focused on areas including business supports, enhancing sustainable employment, re-establishing international access, strengthening marketing investment, promoting competitiveness, increasing investment in tourism product, building a sustainable recovery, and implementing a recovery oversight group. Immediate and long-term measures in each of these critical areas will support the retention and the recovery of businesses, jobs and livelihoods. The TRT strongly believes that with the right investment and support, particularly in the survival phase, tourism can retain capacity, skills and strategic assets that will strengthen the pace of recovery when restrictions are eased to enable international tourism. Survival recommendations, and of the 12 that were made, the following were included: business continuity grant aid support and additional operational supports for enterprises, adjustment of the EWSS, professional development supports for workers in the sector, liquidity measures to support support vulnerable but very viable businesses, facilitating the resumption of inbound international tourism, increasing competitiveness through a VAT reduction and action to decrease the cost and increase the supply of insurance, increase domestic and overseas marketing expenditure. As an industry practitioner and chair of the TRT, the measures announced in Budget 2021 for the survival of the tourism industry are very welcome and will support the industry in the short term. It will be important that the industry is recognised as being hardest hit by COVID-19 and that investment in the sector now and through the stabilisation phase will ensure that the pace of recovery will be strengthened when restrictions can be eased. The implementation of a tourism recovery plan oversight group will be an important next step, and the recent establishment of the Tourism and Hospitality Forum by the Taoiseach and Minister Martin is another very welcome initiative. I fully understand that recent developments have meant that the time is not yet right to reopen Ireland for international tourism. Nevertheless, I cannot stress how important it will be for the recovery of the sector that we find a way to get overseas tourists back to Ireland. We must do in a safe manner, of course, and the recent adoption of the traffic light system in the EU is an important first step in this regard. It is vital now that we fully explore the appropriate testing regime for implementation so that the current period of quarantine may be removed. Finally, tourism has a proven track record in supporting economic recovery, as evidenced by the 65,000 plus jobs created post the 2010 economic crash. The industry stands ready to play its part again and secure a sustainable recovery for its long-term future. Even in these incredibly difficult times, I and my colleagues on the TRT and the wider tourism industry remain confident that the Irish tourism industry can recover and develop as a world leader in sustainable tourism practices. The prize is huge. The industry can return to providing those 250,000 jobs, particularly in Ireland's regions, and generating over 9 billion to the Irish economy again in the future. Thank you.